Hey everybody, Dan O'Mani here. I'm the Executive Vice President and the General Manager of Incast's San Francisco office. Stoked to be joined today with Alex Wilhelm from TechCrunch. Alex, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. This is our second time doing this. We got about one question in, and then we realized that we didn't have the Zoom permissions to record. So, ladies and gentlemen, round two.
Yep, that's why it's going to sound a little more rehearsed and why these questions don't sound like a surprise.
To say. Yeah.
Alex, I like we were talking about before I realized we weren't recording. So the Coinbase story last week, basically the New York Times was going to publish a negative story about Coinbase. Coinbase preempted it a few days early with their own interpretation and basically saying that the New York Times was incorrect. But the big takeaway for me was that they decided not to engage with the story really all that much and instead decided to get their own story out ahead of time. Which is part of a bigger trend we're seeing, I think, particularly in Silicon Valley, where some VCs and some tech companies are sort of taking the approach that they don't really have to engage with press if they don't want to. So I'm curious what your interpretation of that is, and if you've experienced that at all in your own reporting.
It's a minority. Most people want to talk to the press. Most people will call you 3 times to get a hold of you. So, the number of companies that are actually doing this is pretty modest, and you can kind of guess who it's going to be based on kind of their political leanings. The anti-press sentiment that's been especially popular in the Trump era and in kind of the Elon Musk era of tech is the idea that you shouldn't ever apologize. You don't do anything wrong. Everyone makes mistakes, therefore yours don't matter, and so forth. I think it's ridiculous, frankly, as a political position. But, if Coinbase doesn't want to talk to me, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me. The thing that I think they made a mistake in was by front running the story, they torched the Times' trust in them, because I presume they had requests for comment and it gave them some time to respond. And instead of that, the company went around them and went first. Which, you can do. I mean, it's perfectly well within your rights. But if you want to have a working relationship with the publication that's going to keep covering you for the next couple of decades, that's not particularly smart. I mean, it's Brian Armstrong. He's kind of he's thought of as an acolyte of Paul Graham. So I'm not entirely shocked by this, but I don't lose any sleep over it.
No, fair enough. And I should clarify, I know that a spokeswoman did comment on the story for Coinbase, but I think the bigger thing was sort of the preempting, right? And saying we're going to basically scoop the story, which in some ways, took some wind out of the sails, but also you could argue drove more eyeballs to a story that was going to appear the weekend of Thanksgiving too.
Oh, no, they Streisand affected the hell out of it. And also what I thought was a mistake was that, did they think that their front running answered the story's thrust, that its employees felt discriminated against? Because it didn't seem that way at all to me. What it read to me was an internal memo they should have sent to their staff to try to make their executives look better. And so they gave it to the world. And so we could all compare and contrast what employees were saying versus what the manufactured internal statement said. And, maybe this is partially why I like my job, but I trust the workers more than the execs. So.
Yeah, I'm curious, I think it'd be interesting to look back and say what was the outside perception, because we're also tied into this, that we have multiple opinions, right? But what does someone who doesn't really know the inner workings think about all this,
No one cares about this fucking story. Coinbase? No one knows who Coinbase is. Thinking about my siblings, I'm the youngest of 4. I guarantee you the other 3 have never heard of Coinbase.
Right.
So this is very much a tempest in our particular teapot, but that's what we're here to talk about. So, this isn't something that's going to rock the boat. It's not showing up on oh crap, name a morning show, Dan.
Good Morning America.
There you go. It's not going to be on GMA. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Neither, apparently.
It's all within the Silicon Valley bubble. I think that's for sure. So just kind of more around your beat for
Sure.
people who might be listening in and wondering sort of, what you're interested in. So whether it's around the industry or the stage of the company, where are you trying to focus your coverage? And you might laugh when I say focus.
Yeah, I was about to be like, well, that would imply that I'm good at my job. I don't focus enough, probably, to be totally honest. I don't. I end up covering a lot of the late stage stuff, a lot of stuff on the cusp of going public, and then through the IPO cycle, because I enjoy it and I can read an income statement.
Right.
And so I think you end up getting a lot more of that handed to you if you can do the financial stuff. I also help with our earnings coverage, acquisition, M&A news, that sort of thing. But I don't try to stay in one particular box because I don't want to accidentally miss something. And so this week I've covered a couple of, single-digit $1 million rounds because I want to keep both my feet in the earlier parts of startup land, just because, well, one, founders are much more open when their companies are small. And so you can learn a lot more about themselves and the business and establish a bit of a rapport, which is nice. But also because you get next generation information. Like it's nice to cover companies that have already hit 100 million ARR, but often they're a generation behind the curve, if you will.
Right.
And so back to these younger companies, you get a much earlier perspective. Man, I mean, I've covered insurtech this year and fintech and international venture capital trends, and I don't know. It's been all over the place. There's so much more news than there are like people to write about it in tech.
Right.
It's staggering. So you end up scattershot.
Totally. Thanks for that. So over the years, like what has changed in terms of your relationship with PR people? Has it gotten like, and have you like, are there any sort of things that like you consider sort of the best ways that PR people can work with you?
I just think the balance has changed. I mean, we used to know like there's like three PR people for every journalist, and it was like there's 4 PR people, and now it's like there's 6,800. It's because your industry makes money and mine doesn't. Is how it kind of works out. So the discrepancy between number of people is pretty epic. But not that it's a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't have jobs. I'm not trying to be pissy about it. I'm just saying it has, as my industry has shrank, yours has grown. And I do also understand that not everyone is having a great COVID cycle on the PR side, and I'm sympathetic to that, and no one should get fired, and et cetera. So I'm not trying to be at all unkind. I think the way my relationship has changed is that I'm much harder to get a hold of than I used to be. And I don't know if that's because I've been doing this for a long time, more people try, or it's just because of what I just outlined, the fact that there's just this larger imbalance. I don't think I'm at all special in any way, so I don't want to think along those lines. But well, it's very kind, Dan. I've known you for a long ass time, so I know that's some bullshit. No, the thing that I'll say is like, doing my job means that I'm not checking comms as much as I should. So now I used to be caught up on Twitter DMs, behind on email. Now I'm behind on everything right now. And I don't know how to fix it, to be totally honest. I mean, you and I text because that's the simplest way to get through the kind of the mix. But just in my important unread inbox alone right now in Gmail, I've got like 300 and some messages. Yeah. I haven't really read email since Friday. And so, yeah, and this is a key distinction. Like, I think that the world of PR and comms lives in email as the chief function of work. Whereas to me, it's a place where I go to grab individual things. And that's a thematic discrepancy between our two professions. Some journalists, to be clear, go to email. I don't know how, but more power to them. I'm not. So I think that's the thing. I have to be more defensive of my time so I can write. Yeah, it just, everything seems a little harder, I think.
Yeah, got it. I mean this lovingly because I'm the same way. Like, you and I both live on Twitter. We're on, I think, like it's something that's kind of like we don't go there to check and find things. We're there just kind of seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
I know that you probably get insight and you might like get information, but do you ever like get story ideas from Twitter, or do you ever get like story motivation from Twitter?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one reason why you and I are on Twitter isn't just because we're lazy and we should be working more than we are. It's because it's what's happening now, not what's happening later on. This is why I can't stand podcasts and most email newsletters. Ironically, as someone who has a podcast and a newsletter, it's because they're always so far behind the beat. They're so far behind the cycle of news. And you and I are effectively paid to be informed. Right. And then we just do different things with it. But it's a very similar route, I feel. And so we're on Twitter because that's what's happening literally now. And so often on Twitter, I'll find out stuff that I missed. Like yesterday morning, I think it was yesterday, when Airbnb filed the S1A, their new pricing. Maybe it was Monday. I don't know what date it's really today. Thursday? Who knows?
We can amalgam of everything, yeah.
Yeah, 2020 has been awful. But like, I will often catch things because I curate who I follow. So I have different sources for different things, and I try to keep up on things. So story ideas in terms of news, yes. Other things that come up there are data sources and trends. Like, I'll often see different VCs talking about a particular segment or whatever, and that might connect to something else that I read. And then from there, I've got a couple of different data points to triangulate from, and then I'll come up with something that I think is interesting from that. But I mean, if you don't read everything, you probably are going to miss some stuff. And that's why you and I spend so much time doing that.
Totally makes sense. No, that's I feel the same way about Twitter, because it's just the living, breathing side of the news that I feel like I can't really do without it, you know?
And it's fun too. I mean, what's not to love? You get to tell some jokes and complain about music and learn about tech. Yeah, perfect.
So, one thing we noticed from the PR side is that when the Black Lives Matter movement started in June, a lot of reporters were keen on diversifying their sources, and they said we can do something to sort of try to provide a little more quality in the realms we cover. Is that something you guys are thinking about at TechCrunch in terms of diversifying speakers, either at events or the sources you guys quote in your stories?
For sure. And it's something that we've been working on for a couple of years. Actually, we've paid a lot of attention to the diversity of our events, just to pick an example. And we track the metrics of who's on stage, and we try to make sure that it's not 73 Mark Zuckerberg clones up there talking about the future of the world, because certainly that's only kind of one perspective from which people speak. We also spend a lot of time talking to companies about what their teams look like. Jordan Crook, for example, has been really great about talking about every single funny round that she covers. She always talks about the diversity of the team, where they're going, that sort of thing. At Crunchbase News, we did a lot of coverage of female founders and the inequity in kind of the broader venture capital world. So I try to bring that to TC. I mean, we're doing medium. I think we're trying to get to medium good, and then after that, we're going to try to get to good. But it's something that we've been talking about internally for years, and we care.
It's something that it's hard for anyone, I think, to. It's not on anyone's shoulders, right? I think it's a thing that a lot of people should care about, but I also think it's hard to, accountability, I think, goes across the board in a topic that is that pervasive, so.
For sure. No, I haven't done enough. It's easy just to text Hunter Walk from, Homebrew because I'm in a hurry, versus going out and finding who are the new Black GPs at VC firms. And, I'm giving an excuse, but also I'm trying to explain how this kind of ends up happening with the same people, because some people give good quote quick, and sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah.
But that's not an excuse. I need to do better. And I'm hoping that when this 2020 news cycle slows down, knocking on wood that it eventually will, I can get back to building out my new VC list. I have a spreadsheet, and I have a bunch of, Black VCs in there that I want to get to know better, but I just haven't had a week of quiet to get into it. So
yeah, no, believe me, I get it. So last question for you actually is that I believe we're going to have a new president in January. Sounds like it, but I don't know. So with that happening, we just talked earlier about sort of how Coinbase and Elon Musk have kind of followed a little bit more of a Trumpian way of doing things with media. Do you think that there's some, do you think that a new administration can undo some damage that might have been done from the previous administration? Or do you think we're in a new world now and we're just going to have to figure this one out kind of thing?
I don't want to say that Trump caused Elon. I think they've found the same hack, which is that if you can have enough of a fan base, that won't abandon you. You don't have to worry about getting in trouble. Yeah. And Elon Musk has also learned that if you're very wealthy in America, you don't really play by the same set of rules. I think changing the temperature of the White House's communications would be a net good for the nation. But I don't think it's going to change the fact that a lot of people don't like the press. And, I don't really lose sleep over that. Frankly, what does scare me is how many people in the American news ecosystem that are consumers can't tell fact from fiction. That terrifies me. The whole QAnon thing is, I think, indicative of where we are as a society in terms of being able to remain grounded. That's terrifying in a democracy. But no, I mean, Elon's an outlier. Coinbase is an outlier. Biden will be in. Biden will be boring as hell. Biden's going to be he's going to be to the right of Obama, so it's fine. I mean,
right.
The nation's going to amble along for 4 more years. What's after Biden, I think, is more interesting, but certainly a return to normalcy would be good, at least just for my own sanity, Dan. I just want to go to bed and not wake up to Trump claiming that Dominion was hacked by North Korea or whatever the hell it is. The dude needs to just shuffle off stage right and get the hell out of my life. Sorry, it's been a week.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is great. I agree. I totally agree. And yeah, I think boring is good. I would love to, look back on the week of political news and go, oh, I didn't catch any of that, but that all sounds normal and boring to me.
I want to forget who the Department of Education secretary is. Secretary of Education. I would love to not know that it's Betsy DeVos.
Mm-hmm.
I know where her yachts are domiciled for tax purposes. Why do I know that? Why? I want to go back to having to be a career educator who cares about kids. Just, yeah, that's what I want. I know you said you want more and we've gone through it, but I want to ask you a question, which is how are things going at Inkhouse? And well, one on a personal, like how is everyone handling COVID and being working apart? And then also how's the company doing financially?
First off, on the culture front, I think the summer was probably like a really tough time. That was when we felt, I think, the biggest economic impact of COVID, because I think our business is around startups, and so a lot of startups, I think, were tightening up in Q2. So new business basically ground to a halt. And so we lose clients all the time, but we usually replace them, right? So
for sure,
the big thing was that new business just stopped, and so it was like there was no growth, and I think that put everybody under a lot of pressure. And even if it's just the sort of management level that feels it, you feel it by working with someone who's under pressure, right? And so I think people probably felt less comfortable taking vacation. People probably were working harder than they even needed to. So it was rough. Summer was rough. The fall has been, I think, a lot better because, signs of things getting better started to happen. I think a lot of companies stopped bringing new expenses on in Q2 to see how it would go. And when things didn't go as bad as they could have, there was almost like a log jam. Like there had been like a buildup of companies that wanted to change firms or whatever. And so, the V-shaped recovery is for sure an in-house like experience. So it's actually been good. We're definitely not finishing 2020 at the numbers we predicted we would, but we are getting relatively close to where we were. Like we're not far off from where we finished 2019, which I think is pretty great. And I think a lot of that comes down to most of our clients' business, has not been dramatically changed by COVID. I mean, it has, but a lot of it's software delivered over the internet, or it's consumer applications. Like these are things that still people are using. Like I think that other firms specialized in luxury and retail and hospitality, they're probably, or even direct to consumer has been hurt a little more. So we feel pretty lucky. But it's kind of like this weird, like, all right, are we through? Like no one knows what rock bottom is until they get out of it, right? So we're kind of like, are we through it? Like we just don't know, And so the whole joke, like you think you hit it and then someone throws you like a new shovel. That's how it felt in the summer. And so it's been consistent enough. And with, the vaccinations on the horizon, it does feel like we're through the worst of it, but your guess is as good as mine. And I've been done predicting things a long time ago.
Oh gosh, this year has made me feel really, really, really bad at that. No, it's funny to hear you talk about that because it's not like the media business has had a great year either.
Right.
Because when everyone stopped hiring new PR firms, they also stopped advertising. And TC, luckily enough, has 3 businesses. We'd like events, TechCrunch, and then also ads. But our events had to go virtual and our ads went down for a while. And that's not a great place to be in. Well, that doesn't inspire confidence.
Totally. And I've read that, even if you're some media outlets, I think especially at like the local and state level, large cities, dailies, they were losing advertising revenue because even if their readership was up, no advertisers wanted to place their advertisements on a COVID story. So like, even though that story might be getting 5 times the amount of eyeballs than a typical story, like, ultimately it didn't really help them because like, it's not like General Motors wants their, brand right next to a story about, people dying and losing their jobs. So like, it's what a conundrum, like, I know that you'll probably scoff at this, but it's sort of the case for like, some form of like subsidization of news media, like at least at the local level, right? And saying like, can we detach it a little bit from economic ups and downs, and treat it like something we just need, for a functioning democracy. But I think that's a separate Zoom conversation, and we could probably spend an hour talking about it.
Well, so no, one small point, because I know we need to shut up. Like, did you watch the movie Citizen Kane?
Yes. Yes.
So I haven't, but I've seen a clip from it, and that's what I'm going to bring up. Apparently, there's this point in the movie when someone's like talking to this wealthy man who like bought a newspaper, and was like, "How'd you do in business this year?" He goes, "We lost $1 million." And the guy's like, "Well, what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I hope to lose $1 million every year."
Right.
And I think that movie's in black and white, and newspapers sucked. So like,
Right.
I feel like we haven't figured this out yet. I gently scoff at the idea of subsidy because from whom?
Right, right. That's Hearst, right? That's who that was the intended caricature. I think that's who it was. Yeah. It's a pretty interesting one. You should check it out. I think anyone with like an interest in media history for sure.
Also, just if you're a film buff, it's supposed to be great.
Oh yeah,
it's one of those blind spots in my filmography. But yeah, man, we made it through. It's December.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if we can get through the next 2 weeks, and get to what is it, the week of December. Well, let's get to the week of December 21st, and then we'll spike the football.
Yeah, my wife is off the last week of the month. Last week of the month, last week of the year. So I'm shooting, targeting, praying that I can get enough done so I can follow suit. That would be so nice.
Yeah. I actually forgot. I have one more question.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Can the Eagles take the NFC East?
Only because the NFC least is so freaking pathetic. So if you're listening to this and you're not a football fan, you can tune out now, please. But like last week on Monday, the Eagles played the Seahawks, and I grew up in Oregon, so a lot of my family and family kind of orbiters are Seahawks fans, and they didn't even bother to text me to gloat after that game. So
it was well,
we gotta fire Carson Wentz, man. Carson Wentz is over.
Right. He's throwing the ball on the ground at this point. Well, Alex, thanks so much for taking the time. Always fun to chat. Let's talk again soon, and I really, really appreciate it.